Because cyber squatters often create typographical variations of trademarks when registering domain names, I'm sometimes asked whether it would just make sense to be proactive and register all of the obvious misspellings to prevent future problems and avoid domain name disputes altogether. But it's truly impossible to guess what all of the typos would be, especially when cyber squatters substitute multiple characters in a trademark with those that just look similar. But fortunately for trademark owners, egregious typos only make it easier to win a dispute under the UDRP, the Uniform Domain Name Dispute Resolution Policy. Hi, it's Doug Isenberg, and I'm about to talk about what happened in a rather bold case of typo squatting. The UDRP complaint was filed by Wells Fargo, one of the largest banks in the United States, which was founded almost 160 years ago. Although the decision is unclear, it looks like the oldest live Wells Fargo trademark registration was registered in 1962, claiming a date of first use in commerce of the year 1852. And Wells Fargo uses the domain name wellsfargo.com, which was created in 1993, long before most consumers began conducting any banking business on the internet. The disputed domain name in this case looks a lot like Wells Fargo, but it's actually WEISFARG0.com. In other words, the two letters L in the trademark have been replaced by the letter I, and the letter O has been replaced by the numeral 0. Now, this is obviously not a domain name that anyone would ever actually type in the address bar of a web browser, but cyber squatters often create these so-called look-alike domain names to use in phishing scams, where they send emails to unsuspecting victims masquerading as someone else. In other words, a recipient of an email from an address using the domain name in this case might mistake it for saying Wells Fargo when it actually says WEISFARG0.com. Now, it's unclear what, if anything, the registrant of this domain name actually did with it, because the decision said that there was no associated website. Fortunately, though, it appears as if Wells Fargo detected it quickly after registration and immediately took action under the UDRP, because the domain name was created on December 8th, 2020, and Wells Fargo filed its UDRP complaint just 69 days later on February 15th, 2021. That's a good reminder about the importance of monitoring new domain name registrations. While this wasn't a complicated UDRP case, it holds some important lessons for trademark owners. One of the most important things to know is that the UDRP panel easily found the domain name confusingly similar to the Wells Fargo trademark, which is always the first element under the UDRP's three-part test. And the conclusion on this first element is not at all surprising, given that typo squatting, or the intentional misspelling of a trademark in a domain name, is usually intended to cause confusion in the first place. In fact, although the word typo squatting does not appear anywhere in the UDRP, the WIPO overview specifically says that a domain name which consists of an intentional misspelling of a trademark is considered to be confusingly similar to the relevant mark. And the overview adds that the substitution of similar appearing characters and the inversion of letters and numbers are examples of typo squatting. So in the Wells Fargo case, here's specifically what the panel wrote on the UDRP's first element. The slight visual differences between complainant's trademark and the at-issue domain name does nothing to distinguish the domain name from complainant's trademark. Next, on the second element of the UDRP's three-part test, the panel noted that there was no evidence that the registrant of the domain name had any rights or legitimate interests in it. So, based on the claims from Wells Fargo, the panel found for the bank here too. Finally, on the third element of the UDRP, bad faith, the panel first noted that the domain name was being passively held. And as I discussed in another UDRP case study video, the passive holding doctrine allows for a finding of bad faith even in the absence of an active website. And that alone seemed enough for the panel here. But importantly, the panel directly addressed the unusual typosquatting issue in the domain name and explained its significance to the case, which provides another lesson for trademark owners. Here's what the panel wrote. The domain name shows typosquatting on its face. Typosquatting is a practice whereby a domain name registrant deliberately introduces typographical errors or misspellings into a trademark, or perhaps into a domain name or other mark related to or sponsored by the target trademark holder, and then registers the resulting string in a domain name. The registrant then may use the confusion to inappropriately capitalize on the target trademark's goodwill. The WEISFARG0.com domain name is visually similar to complainant's trademark and to complainant's actual domain name, and is apt to be confused with complainant's trademark and complainant's official website when read. Typosquatting in itself indicates bad faith under the UDRP. That last line, typosquatting in itself indicates bad faith under the UDRP, is one that has been repeated many times in various forms through the years. In fact, the WIPO overview has addressed the issue by stating that panels have consistently found that the mere registration of a domain name that is identical or confusingly similar, particularly domain names comprising typos or incorporating the mark plus a descriptive term, to a famous or widely known trademark by an unaffiliated entity can by itself create a presumption of bad faith. For trademark owners, this is important because it means that under the right circumstances, the trickiest and most deceptive domain names, the ones that have the potential to cause some of the biggest problems through phishing or other scams targeting consumers, can be perfect candidates for the UDRP, enabling trademark owners to quickly and permanently shut down any scams associated with typosquatting domain names. If you want to learn more about the UDRP, please check out my masterclass on domain name disputes, as well as other resources on my GigaLaw website. And be sure to subscribe to the GigaLaw YouTube channel to be notified of future videos discussing other UDRP cases. Thanks for watching, and see you next time online.